So earlier in September, when the good folks at TEDxSNU and I got talking, we started thinking about what I can talk to you about. Their suggestion was, look, you're going to have some 200 odd young, bright students in the room, folks who are going to go out there in the next 1 or 2 years. We're going to transform lives, build something, make a difference. So we agreed that I'm going to dive deep into what I do best, what I'm passionate about, and just run with it. Now, there's a catch there. Because for many of us, what we do, what we're passionate about, and what we believe in are actually very different things. And it's not because we choose for it to be so, but it's because almost all of us, we're molded and shaped by our circumstances, by the commitments that we make, or our temperaments, or even the crazy ideas and choices that we make when we're young. I'm living with one right here, and I'm not even sure why I'm living with it for the rest of my life. But that's where we were. And luckily for me, what I do and what I'm passionate about pretty much run the same track. Almost everything that I do at work or outside of it involves some form of storytelling. Either the making or the telling or the selling of stories. Disclaimer, not in my personal relationships, but everything outside of it. But stories, why is it so important, and why do I think that I can build an entire career out of storytelling? For me, stories are an open slate of possibility. Stories are like jello or water, you know? They take the ship that you want them to take. And it's incredibly powerful because everything around us, from politics to business to perceptions to our relationships, everything gets molded and shaped by the stories that get built around them. To think in terms of stories, I think, is fundamentally human. We use stories to make sense of ourselves, to build connections between people and brands and products, or to make sense of our achievements. And if I can do it for brands, why can I not do it for myself, to build my own brand, my own public me? So I want to ask you today, what is a brand, right? I don't mean like this. I also don't mean like this. Confused, right? Yeah, I know, me too. See, your personal story is essentially a composite of everything that's publicly available about you. You know, the perceptions people have about you, the anecdotes, all the gossip, all those social media posts and Instagram posts and Snapchat stories that you're putting out there indiscriminately, all of that together, creating this representation of you. It's how you earn your place here. It's how you distinguish yourself from everybody else. But the power of a personal story is not just in the story itself, but in the fact that a story can change the way people perceive you. With technology now making it, easier to tell your story and experience those of others, and as the lines between our physical and our digital lives, as those lines are blurring, stories can make and they can break us. So today I'm going to share with you some of my experiences with and experiments with stories as I went about building my own personal story as my autonomous brand. Now, as a career woman navigating the many corridors and choices and connections of corporate life, I deal in stories every single day. I write them, I create them, and I guess I do an okay job because I have this cool job that I really love doing every single day. And so I thought, let me try and build something of my own, which I can stand for, which people can know me for. But what I didn't know was, if it's going to be, starting my own story, my journey, if it's going to be something as simple as a story of me just being me. Now, that's the point where I was thinking where to head from. So here are my 3 key takeaways that I've learned over the last many years. I'm not going to be so bold as to say that I'm going to give you advice, because I know better. But these are lessons that I have learned over the many years, essentially, from my failings and my learnings. And the reason I chose to talk about this today is because I want you to understand the importance and the impact that stories can have on your life, your careers, and your trajectory. So takeaway number one. Now, this takes me back to the time I used to be a journalist. You see, as a journalist reporting news, you do just that, right? You report news. Facts and numbers, data, things as they have happened, the way that they have happened. No judgment, no opinion, not your personal standpoint for sure. I'm obviously talking about the time which is pre-Times Now, 2006, 2007, when news was really about being right, not so much about being the first. So all kinds of personal opinion, bias, all kinds of elaborate forms of storytelling would take a backseat to factual reportage, and rightfully so. So there was no place for the personal thinking, which is why, as I went about covering the news that I was doing and standing in the sun all day and getting my sound bites and all of that, I said, I want a platform where I can talk about what I think and what my ideas are. Now, what I didn't know, though, was what I wanted that platform to look like. Will I use visuals? Will I use the written word? What kind of technical skills do I need to know to be able to build that? Who can I turn to for advice? Will I make it public? Not the strongest vision, to be sure. But just because starting out is 100 times better than thinking and planning, so I did some research, and at that point in time, Blogspot was kind of popular, so I subscribed and I started my own blog. But one of the most significant, I think, influences that I've seen on my own journey has been really just the writing. Because the more I wrote, the more I understood my own process. It's strange, but starting out your own story as your brand is really a lot about knowing yourself. It's a lot like these impulses that I have, and I'm sure many of you do too, where you think, I have to travel to really know myself. So this is that, except this is in the spoken or written form, and it's a lot less cheaper than actual travel. But like everything else, what you stand for changes over time. So between 2007, when I started out my blog, and 2017, today, my aspirations, my expectations of people and myself, what I want to stand for, all of that has undergone a dramatic change. So somewhere in the middle of 2013, I went in and unpublished my entire blog. So much so that when I met my partner, and in the initial months of getting to know each other, he was really curious that I've run a blog for many years, and he was like, send it to me. And that just wouldn't fly, because in those 7-8 years of running my blog, my entire center of gravity had changed, and I did not really have those ideas representing me anymore. So my learning then is that it's okay to start without a plan. It's okay not to know, what am I going to do with this thing? Just start. Okay, so the next. Takeaway number 2, and this one really took me some time to get to. So I kept writing, and I kept, talking about storytelling, trying to sound like I know what I was talking about, but something didn't stick. It was like people were not really warming up to me, or they didn't see me. And that's when the realization hit. Okay, I'm going to be a little honest here and say that it's not so much a realization as much as someone really pointing it out to me in clear, plain English. This person who's been a mentor for many, many years for me, and she said, look, stop trying so hard. The voice that you use, that's not you. People can't relate to it. And I guess that was happening because I was trying to sound like someone. I was trying to project myself as somebody. And it was particularly true of those speeches and articles that I was, where I was talking about how to tell better stories. I don't know anything else that I was doing before that was kind of pointless. Some of that was a good commentary in terms of how to build action or theme or character, but it wasn't me. And it took me some time to understand that while it's okay to be influenced and inspired by all these different people, your voice is so completely and so wonderfully your own. And it is a journey that will never really end, because you will always be crafting it, like I am today, every single day. Let's take an example, right? I want you to think about what a personal voice, an authentic voice can be. For me, it's a lot like the clothing choices that we make. Let's say you're standing in front of your cupboard before you're going out to a party. You have to ask yourself and be really honest about, one, whose attention you're trying to grab, two, what is the occasion, and three, what is your style? If you ignore that, you're going to make some really uncomfortable clothing choices and maybe even hilarious ones. But on the other side, a real and a humble and a human voice is a lot like a well-tailored suit. It's going to make you look great, it's going to make you feel great, and you're going to be just that much closer to cracking that deal or landing your job or that first date. So for me, that is the centerpiece of storytelling, that no matter how you craft or package your story, unless you're willing to be yourself, everybody can tell. You see, people don't really care about how much you know until they know how much you care. And nobody is going to care unless they're able to take something from you which is real and authentic and borrow from it. Which brings me to my third takeaway: co-create. With the rise of technology, the ways that you can tell stories, the opportunities are far higher. And what you can do with that technology is kind of mind-boggling, right? So if you look at co-creation of content, and I will come to that in a little bit, but at one point in time, even 5 years back, stories were a one-way broadcast. Now they are a two-way exchange because you can have other people contributing to and participating in your story. I am so intrigued by the many different roles that people can now play in your story, and the spectrum of things that you can be in between being the teller and the listener of stories. So co-creation of content is really like the next level or the next stage in building your own personal story. It shows a lot of credibility, it shows maturity, it also shows a lot of confidence in your own authenticity. Write joint blogs. Invite people in to, do these LinkedIn videos with you. Or when you find that you've got a passion, a common passion, go ahead and organize tweet chats. Your brand is going to be just so much more stronger if you let people in, if you let them take from what you have, build off of it, learn from it, and give it a new life. If you look at my online community now, I've got people like Emmy award-winning storytellers, chief marketing officers, people who call themselves technologists, and some of them who are working with community groups all around the world. There's even a magician on there. And as much as I would like to do it, and I don't do it often enough, I would like to invite them into my story. And in agreeing to participate, they've elevated my brand. To get there, it has taken quite a lot, obviously. It's not a linear journey. For me, it's taken a lot of persistence. It has taken effort, a curbing of the ego, very, very important, and a keen observation of people and technologies and platforms. You see, there are lots of examples all around us, right? So if you're looking at, for example, J.K. Rowling, her story, we all know about her story, right? She grew up poor. She struggled for many, many years to make ends meet. She obviously struck gold with the Harry Potter series, but what she has done so beautifully well is how she's taken her own story and used that narrative and weaved it in so beautifully into the story of her product, which is the success called Harry Potter. And what she has essentially done is she's taken her own story, and that's how she's become, from being an unemployed person living on state benefit, to becoming a great brand with a great reputation that precedes her, and a billionaire all under a decade. And you don't have to go so far to see these examples, right? Look at Gurmehar Kaur, for example, or Kangana Ranaut, right? She's this now feisty young woman who knows what she wants, who knows what her worth is, and she's going to get out there and get it. Coincidence? Possibly not. There might be a lot of deep thinking, planning, timing that must have gone in to select those things that these people want to be seen and heard talking about and talking for. The way that these guys are all building their, their personal stories and their brands is a great example in storytelling, honestly. But look, before I wrap up, I want to leave you with this one thought. Because every time I've put the two words, personal and brand, together in one sentence, people have gone, ooh, opportunistic, self-serving. Everything aside, the story of all our lives, for all of us, is really based on direct experiences. We find our place on this planet, and we change it and change ourselves with our story of ourselves. As you walk out, as you walk into your 30s and your 40s, and I know it will happen whether or not you want it, and a lot of you cannot really think of being in your 40s at this point in time, but I want you to take a moment to reflect on the self-awareness that you've gained along the way. The value of a really personal, good, valuable story, a personal story, is that you value yourself and others value you. And you can take criticism not as a tearing down, but as a point of reflection, a point of view to better your own self. And that is the real benefit of consciously investing in your own personal story. That's why it's worth giving it so much thought, shape, and life. Thank you.